Hey y'all, thank you for watching. Welcome to the video. I appreciate you tuning into the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the Truthears Zero. Don't mind the cable. I've replaced it with a mic cable. This is the cable that comes with it, and this is the cool little pouch that you get. I'm not going to do a whole unboxing, but I will tell you I kind of like this pouch here. So the way that we're going to structure the video today is I'm first going to talk to you, just kind of give you the quick overview on its own, what I like, what I dislike about this, and then we're going to move on from there to doing comparisons with some of the other, I feel like similar IEMs that I've had based on AB listening for the, the better part of a couple of days. I've actually had this longer than I've had the last zeros that we did. From 7 Hertz, and the reason is these kind of broke my brain when I did a whole listening session. I thought I had them all understood, and then I tried different tips on them, which completely changed my perception of them. So as you can see, these have got spring tips on them now. I started out with Spinfit tips on them. I wasn't a big fan of the tips that came in the box, so those are the two that I settled on. I also tried comply tips with them, which worked pretty well, and gave you better isolation, but to me you lose a little bit of energy in the mids and bass, and but you know, if you need the most isolation, then the complies are probably your best bet on them. So real quick in terms of build quality, these are plasticky, as you can see here. I mean, they got a cool color with them, but these definitely feel plasticky. They're pretty light. Bonus points for having a real left-right right there, easy to find. This is the cable that came with them, one of the nicer cables that I've gotten with an IEM. I mean, I don't know that, like, this is an OH10 cable. It may even be like the same cable basically, so it's a nice cable. You get that with it. You get the pouch with it. You get some tips with it. I'm not going to go through the whole box thing. But what we can, or what I would like to talk about, is just how these things blew me away. And I hope anybody that's watching this, a lot of times I'll have negative videos even about things that other people like. So having 2 in a row that really excited me is pretty untypical for me. But I'm excited about both of these sets, and I feel like between the two they could pretty much have you covered. The last video that we did on the 7 Hertz zeros, those were really good. These are also another pair of really nice IEMs. If you just came here for the quick take, with the right tips, these are incredibly impactful in the bass in a way that reminds me of having a subwoofer in a trunk. It doesn't have the most nuanced bass, but you can literally feel the pow. Like if you got you listen to Enter Sandman or you listen to Down with the Sickness and you hear them just at the beginning of it and you want to feel that. I've never heard a better set of IEMs with Spinfits anyway on them in terms of just absolutely giving you that sense. It's not this deep, nuanced bass, it's this impactful bass. It's like being punched. It's like this real punchy bang in the bass. And so that doesn't always work great in terms of if you listen to music that needs a lot of nuance to that kind of thing, it doesn't do amazing for that. So like when you've got those Spinfits on it, it kind of becomes more of a one-trick pony. But if you like metal, if you like rock, if you like hip-hop, and you want to have that sensation, like there's that speaker in the trunk and you just want it, you want to feel that wallop of bass, and you're okay with losing some clarity, and it doesn't resolve that well in the mids. Like male vocals sound okay, but female vocals start really kind of dropping off. There's a lack of sparkle and energy and detail in the mids with these if you use the Spinfits. But these are like literally my favorite IEMs I've ever listened to in terms of just straight bass impact. So I've had a complaint for a long time with like whenever I listen to rock on IEMs, it feels like the drum doesn't have any bass to it. You'll get a splat, you know, that kind of splat kind of feel instead of like boom, like that real impact. And these will actually give you true impact, which really made me smile because it was something that I didn't know if you'd really get in an IM. I'd never, even the OH10s, they give you this punchy doot doot doot, but it's not like a real like pow, like the idea like somebody hits a drum, and if they hit it really hard, like again Enter Sandman at the beginning of it, if you listen to it, it's like it's really hitting them hard, and you feel this almost sense of, you can sense how hard he is hitting it based on the bass impact that you get on a pair of Spinfits on this, which is super cool. So I'm basically going to go around, this is going to be like 2 reviews, okay? So I'm going to talk to you about what this sounded like with the Spinfits, and then basically when I was ready to do the video, I just threw my spring tips on there just because I hadn't yet, to just double check how it would sound, because theoretically it would sound good, at least to my ears, because the way that I hear Spinfits is I hear Spinfits, not Spinfits, the spring tips, those, I keep messing those up because they kind of sound the same. The spring tips, the way that I hear them, and I think a lot of other people do too, there might be some that don't, and I've heard those people, but I don't get it. Anyway, the way I hear them, and while I'm thinking of it, just to tell you, if you're interested in buying these, I'd buy them a size larger than you normally do. The small, medium, and large that came with the chews, none of them gave me sufficient seal. So when I would listen to them, I wouldn't hear much bass at all, and actually that's on the Quarks, that actually kind of works. But anyway, to stay on topic, if you usually buy large ear tips, buy the extra large with these. And I had to buy them from Shenzhen Audio because it's the only place that you could get them. But what's cool is I think it was free shipping. They were under $15, and you get 3 sets of them, and you can buy them up to an extra large. So if you've got bigger ears, you may want to do that if you're interested in trying these or anything with spring tips, and you're not getting any bass at all when you're using them. It's probably because they don't fit you right. They make them really small. So that being said, we're going to do some comparison work against everything that I feel like is similar to it based on my library of IEMs. I'm going to start with the Kai here. As you can see, the Kai, I tried to put spring tips on them as well. I've tried them with Spinfits. I've tried them with the stock stuff. I've put comply tips on them for foams, and no matter what I did, I couldn't quite get them in, like, even in the same ballpark. And again, just to give you a sense of this is a $50 set, and again, it's more plasticky and stuff. But this is an $80 set, and a lot of people really like the Kai, and I have a lot of respect for HBB, so I've been trying to understand why I'm just not getting anything good out of it. And I think it's because I do all of my bass testing with the Apple dongle. That's what I'm using, because these are budget sets, and I think a lot of people are just going to have a simple dongle, or they're just going to be plugging it into their phone. And so that's what I'm basing my tests on. But if something comes up weird, I'm going to start doing other things. I do own a Qlix 5K, which is awesome, and I've done a review on that if you want to check it out. And I also have a shit Modi Magni stack with a Loki Mini equalizer, so I can use, you know, bigger stuff. But for IEMs, for the most part, I want to be able to use an Apple dongle. I mean, I don't know if you're like me, but I have like 3 of them, and I can lose 2 of them in the same day and then find them later. In general, when I'm using IEMs, I really don't want to have to keep track of some, you know, $100 dongle or $50 dongle, or lose my Qlix and figure out where that is or whatever. I just want a simple dongle, and the Apple dongle tests extremely well, so that's what I'm using. So the reason I'm alluding to that is that I finally figured out what the issue was with the Kais here. Can you tell by looking at it? They're bougie. That's the issue. They're bougie. They're bougie IEMs. You can tell just by looking at them. We should have known that to begin with. They need more power to my ears, and what you get, regardless of what tips you get on them, at least to my ears. And thank you. One of my subscribers had pointed out that it sounded better with more power, so I I went ahead and tested it just to cross that off the list, and I was surprised that I heard the difference, is that when you listen to the Kai without an amplifier using a dongle connected to an iPhone, which is how I test these, as I was just describing, what I get out of it is a lack of bass punch. There's a little bit of like a missing, it sounds slightly boomy, and a lack of punch, and the mids don't resolve very well. It does sound a lot better once you give it more power. Those issues seem to go away for me. So if you're willing to constantly give it power, you're walking around with the Q-Licks all the time, then you'll get better sound out of it. I did find that there was an argument for this over the zeros if you were using it on a powered amplifier. I found it sounds slightly better than the zeros with the amplifier, because once you added the amplifier, for me, with Spinfits on it, what I got back from it was I got that bass that I was looking for. It tightened up, and the mids started resolving better, and I could actually hear better sense of separation. Like I could hear the treble better than I could hear it on the zeros. And the mids came, they started to separate a little bit, and I got a little bit better sense of resolving, like that kind of like slight sense of fuzzy airiness left when I plugged them into a Q-Licks. If you want a more mature sound than you get with the zeros, if you just want bass impact, this would probably still be the move. But if you want a more mature, well-rounded, it's kind of smooth and warm, but with a nice kick in the bass, but you have, it's like a more grown-up blonde kind of feel to it. And that's what's so frustrating, is that when I plug these into a dongle DAC, it's like 80-90% of the way there, but what bothers me about it, I can't get past, because it's just annoying. I mean, you're talking about missing a sense of presence in the mids, and you're missing impact and bass, and it just kind of ruins it. But once I added back in the power I think that it needs, then it sounded very good. So basically, if you're willing to add power to it, I'd say that this is still a really good option. And weirdly, I didn't like these as much once you started adding more power to them. So I thought these sounded better actually with a source like the Apple dongle, where if you added more power, it seemed like it almost started to get a little edgy. It was like the bass almost got like a snap to it. Like it started to feel like it was almost too much. So I think these are like perfect on a low power dongle device, and even something like the Q-Licks maybe gave it a little bit too much. I mean, it still sounded good. Maybe I just had the power up a little bit higher and that's what I was getting. But if you're plugging this into an amp or something and you don't like it, I would try it on a lower power source, because for me they sounded better. Okay, to talk about the blondes, again, if you're on a budget, these are still an excellent option. These are the BLON BL03s. For me, I did a video on them and I've talked about this, but essentially, for me, if you're going to use these, you kind of have to wiggle this until it breaks, because this part that goes into your ear, like when it's standard, it'll just kind of pull out of your ear, and then the tips that come with it don't have a sense of like tack or stickiness at all, so they just kind of slide out, so you end up kind of going like this, and then it just pops back out, and that's the whole thing. So for me, if you're going to use the blondes, you buy Spinfits with them, you buy a size up. So like I use like the extra larges on these, and so when you do that and you put them in your ear, it just barely has to get inside of your ear, and then the tackiness of the Spinfits make it stick, and you don't have to stick it in super far because you've got a wider surface area because you buy bigger tips. So for me, like I usually use large. I bought extra larges of these. They work great. You just barely put them in your ear. They create a seal, and you get your bass and everything. Where when I had these standard, I couldn't even get a good enough seal to feel a sense of impact in the bass. Like it was like a night and day difference. So these are, a lot of people got into the hobby because of these. These are still great. On a budget area, I want to say they're $25–$30, and then you'd have the extra tips. So unless you already have tips, and then you can try reusing what you have with these, and then you have under $30. But what's interesting about these is that these are still excellent. I feel like these are actually the true successor in the way that when you listen to it, now these have two drivers and this has a single driver, but the two drivers in these give you a very clear sense of a separation from bass, from the mids and the treble, and because of that you get a better sense of separation in the instruments than you do with the BLON. The BLON does not give you nearly as much impact in the bass. And what's funny is that if you look at a chart, and I think this is why it's really important to not just rely on charts, is like I didn't look at charts before I listened to these and got my opinions, but I was starting to just look through, and out of curiosity I started checking them out. And I think the BLONs measure significantly higher in bass than both of these guys. And when you listen to it, that's not what I get. The BLONs can't give you anywhere near the sense of just like impact and punch that these do, for me anyway. That's what I'm getting when I listen to them. The BLONs are still very respectful, but it's like the tuning is almost magical on these and how good they did it, but you can hear that the driver is limited in how much that it can do. The vocals, the instruments are not super resolving and detailed. There's not really strong separation in the different instruments, and you don't get the level of bass impact. You can see what it's going for and what it's doing, but when you use these, to me, they feel like the fleshed out version of this, with the Spinfits on it. Now, what was disappointing is that when you feel that and you hear it, you still are losing a little bit of cleanliness in the mids with the Spinfit tips on them, not with these spring tips with the Spinfits. And that was what bothered me. And the second round we're going to do here, I'm going to talk about it with the spring tips and how that made a difference on them to me. The Mele's, I always have a soft spot in my heart. Like, I bought these for a lot of my family members that had never been into hi-fi before as gifts. I listened to these extensively. I really like these a lot for rock music. They helped me to see that there's different flavors IEMs that do different things. These have a warm, lush sound that can be very pleasing in certain situations. Like, you know, some rock and some rap, it just sounds great. It's big and it's smooth and it's lush, and the mids aren't too forward, and it's really enjoyable to listen to. But the issue with these is that the driver technology, the ability of these drivers, that everything about the IEM market has kind of passed it by now. And I didn't really believe that till I started listening to it, and I realized the bass sounds kind of smoothed out, kind of muddy. The mids sound unresolving. There's almost no instrument separation in these. You know, there's just, everything's just kind of muddy, lumped together, and it's smooth, but it doesn't give you at all what you're looking for today, in the sense like what you'd expect. Even on the 7Hz zeros have got they got clear instrument separation. They've got good clarity. I mean, obviously they're not the bassiest set, but it's amazing that I will keep these. I'll probably always, just for nostalgia, but these really feel like a product of a bygone era, and what they came out, I don't know, like a year ago, maybe less than that, maybe 2 years. I don't remember, but they're not that old, and that's what's crazy about this market, is you see how much things can change in a short period of time. Okay, now for the part that I'm really excited about, which is comparing the Truthears Zero versus everything once you put the spring tips on them. And again, I need to put some caveats here. If you usually use large tips and you have some large ones from the Chew laying around and you try them here, to me they don't do it. I had to buy the extra large ones. I had to get bigger spring tips for me to get the kind of performance that I wanted out of these. And the reason it occurred to me right before I did the review to try them is that my perception of these particular tips is that they tighten up the mids, they tighten up the treble. They if it's already like a clear set, it almost becomes harsh, and it kind of reduces the bass a little bit. You get less of a bass impact. It just kind of makes it more tight, but like less quantity in the bass. That's what I hear when I listen with the spring tips. And it just kind of occurred to me, I kind of had this eureka moment. That's exactly the problem that I have with the zeros, is that I'm not getting the kind of detail that I want out of the bass. I'm getting a lot of quantity, but I'm getting it to where on a lot of different tracks, it literally is just like this reverberation underneath the tracks. And I was saying, like, this is great for rock and certain things, but you really have to be particular for what you listen to it with the Spinfits, because on some music it just doesn't sound good. It's just like this going underneath the music that doesn't sound that great. But once I put the spring tips on them, I got better clarity in the mids, which is what I wanted, and female and male vocals sounded spot on all of a sudden. I no longer had the issue of them feeling kind of pushed back and vague and recessed and just kind of unresolving. They cleared right up, the treble comes back, and the bass impact is still there. It's just a little bit less than what you got before. So again, if you go back to something like Enter Sandman, it's still very impressive in the way that he's wailing on the toms there. But it's just not quite a like earth-shattering, like, whoa, jaw-dropping, this just made my head explode kind of sound. And I think that it's a really good trade-off. Or, you just buy tips, you got both sets of tips, and you trade them out depending on how you want to listen to them. Now, I will tell you, like, if you wanted to try like E-series tips on these, they literally won't even work. Like, the final E-series tips were just too thin to even get on these. This is a very wide nozzle. I haven't looked at the specs, but just FYI, if you've got IEMs that are a little bit smaller, IEM tips that are a little bit smaller, they may not fit on these, or at least the finals didn't. Everything else that I tried, I was able to wrangle on there, but it's like you kind of have to stretch some of them to get them on there correctly. I did not have the same results with using the spring tips on the Kai. I mean, they kind of did the same thing, but didn't give me the same magic. With the Kais, if I just plugged them into an Apple dongle, it still didn't sound that great. Still the lack of bass kind of punch still is a little bit bloated, kind of a little bit boomy sounding, and it didn't result, it basically did the same thing. It just sounded a little bit more like spring tips than the other tips out there. Versus the blondes, it started now, instead of it being like way more bass than the blondes, it gives you more impact, more sense of separation, more sense of clarity, more detail, and got to the point where I realized that what they started to remind me of was actually the OH10s. I mean, with the build quality here, obviously they're completely different. So the OH10s are this beautiful metallic and really nice. They're beautiful. They're great. They're really nice IMs. But when you put the spring tips here, it started to make me wonder, like, these sound a lot like the OH10s now. So I did a lot of A/B testing back and forth with them once the spring tips were on there. So these will sound a little bit more laid back in the vocals, a little more vague, a little bit less clarity in the mids, but they will have a bigger bass impact feeling. Like, it's just a bigger bass. Like, it just feels like it's doing more. Where the OH10 is a very specific, punchy, clean, kind of narrow, like right in its lane kind of sound. The mids are really crispy, the treble's crispy, the bass is tight, and it's just kind of like, it's like a ninja. It's like it's going, it's doing its thing, chopping stuff up. It's killing it. And then these are a little bit more, slightly fat muscle man is what comes to mind. I don't know. Hopefully that makes sense. But there is a difference between these. The OH10 resolves better, sounds more clean, better instrument separation, better treble, but these come awful close. They don't. Some would probably rather have a little bit more laid back mids, a little bit more relaxed, not as resolving, but easier to turn up loud, more bass impact, a bigger bass, a kind of more fun bass than like a tight, just tight punchy bass. You don't get as good of instrument separation, but it's still pretty good. But again, these are 50 versus, whatever, 150, 180, something like that now. So I will say that these, I had to go back and forth a lot of times to realize really what the differences were between these. Once I got it, I could hear it. But just casually, if you're just listening to it and you didn't know which was which, I'm not sure that you would immediately pick out the differences between them. And that's why I was so excited about these IEMs. So for gaming specifically, I wanted to say these are good. These are fine. It gives you bass impact. It gives you good detail. It gives you a good sense of distance and of really good impact for guns. But behind you isn't very clear. So it's kind of like, it's like a good out here, and then it's just kind of vague. So it's fine like in a pinch, but I still think that you'd prefer the 7 Hz zeros if you're interested purely in gaming performance. Once you put these on, they really compete with some of the big boys, and they're an excellent complement to the other zeros that I just did a review on, because they will allow you to, can be like your base fun set, and then you got your more reference, soundstage, clarity, detail kind of set with the Truthier, or with the 7 Hz zeros. And between the two of them, for under $100, you can have something that I feel like it can compete with hundreds of dollar IEMs. I mean, they really are excellent in their own right, and they can do just about anything you could want to do. And it's a really exciting time to be part of this hobby, just given the fact that we can do so much with so little money now. So I'll leave some links in the description. Obviously, I really appreciate everybody that's been watching the videos lately. It gives me the motivation to continue, working hard on this stuff. I'm really excited because I really enjoy some of the technology just coming along and changing. Like, I don't know if you've listened to Crinacle, but I believe this is the first set that had 2 dynamic drivers, and there's actually a crossover for the difference between the bass and the treble, and it makes a huge difference. Like, you can really hear the difference having those separate, and I'm really excited to see where this technology goes and what happens over the next few years. I'm sure 2 weeks from now there might be something even better out, so I'm going to get this video out while I can. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate everybody. I think that's everything I got. If I forgot something, I'll come back and add it, I guess. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I hope you have a great day.